Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. So tonight is the fourth in a series of 5 talks on St. Francis of Assisi. I'm especially doing this because we are in the Jubilee year of St. Francis of Assisi. October the 3rd of this year is the 800th anniversary of Francis's death. And saints are always celebrated, if we can, on their death day. Not their birthday, but their death day, because that's the day in which they enter into the kingdom of God, okay? So, I've invited Francis to be with us tonight. He's on the altar here. A couple of people were not here. I'm going to explain what's going on with that. A few weeks ago, I was downstairs, and a member of our OCIA was looking at, we have a display case of kind of Mother of God history and memorabilia down there on this wall, and included in there were 2 relic queries. All right, and somebody asked, well, who are they? And I couldn't remember. I'm sure I knew when I first came here and was told, but so as I'm looking, it's up high, so I couldn't get a good view of it, but it looked like it was FRA, and I thought, is that Francis? And so I checked with my my facilities guy, who is also our history guy here, and he brought it out, and it is St. Francis of Assisi. He did some more research in our archives and found the paperwork for that relic and found out that it is a first-class relic, right? Now, a first-class relic is a part of the saint, all right? And what this is a tiny, tiny piece of bone from St. Francis. Now, this is 800 years old, so it has deteriorated into just some flecks of dust, but it's still Francis, all right? It's a first-class relic. A second-class relic would be something like a cloak or a shirt or a sock or whatever it was that actually the saint wore, or something that they used, if they used a pen or something, it was some kind of that they actually touched. Then there is also the third-class relic, and that's something, anything that you can take and you touch it to a second-class relic, and it becomes a third-class relic, all right? So, now you can't touch this because there's glass over the top of it to preserve it. You have over 800, and we don't know how we got it, all right? We don't know its path for the last 800 years, you know, where it's been, and who has seen it and how it's been used. We don't have that information, all right? But we have a letter of authentication that says it definitely is a first-class relic of St. Francis. Now, there was another relic that was found there too, and we found out that it is of a saint whose name is St. Arnold. Have any of you ever heard of St. Arnold? I didn't know anything about St. Arnold. St. Arnold is the patron saint of brewers. And the reason is that he was a bishop in Germany during the time of the plague. And the plague was often passed through drinking water that was infected. So he encouraged people to stop drinking water and to start drinking beer, all right? So because of that, he is recognized as the patron saint of brewers, all right? So St. Arnold. And if you do your own kind of specialty brewing at home, anybody here? All right, you could pray to St. Arnold to make sure that your special batch comes out well. Was his last name Beautiful? I don't know anything about that. All right. So, but tonight we're going to be talking about St. Francis and the environment. We associate Francis very much with the environment and with nature. Now, some of that is because of some things we've talked about before. The story of St. Francis and the wolf of Gubbio, where he talked to the people of Gubbio and he talked to the wolf and arranged a deal where they would bring food out every day to feed him, and he would no longer attack their animals, their pets, and even some children. There were some children that he had killed, and so he would no longer do that, and he didn't. He only lived about 2 more years. I think he must have been up in age already. He survived for the next 2 years, and but he he became a friend to the people of Gubbio. And we see that Francis was the one that accomplished that. The other great nature story involving St. Francis of Assisi is his preaching to the birds. There's one scene in his life, and it's one that you'll see very often portrayed, is he is standing and there's a tree full of birds, and so I'm still got beer on my mind, of birds, and he is preaching to them, and they are listening attentively to every word that he says about Jesus. All right, so because of these two events especially, he is recognized as the patron saint of ecology and of the environment. All right, Pope Francis wrote one of his encyclicals, which is known as Laudate Si, all right, which means praise be you, and it is taken from the poem that you have in front of you, all right, on the paper that I handed out, the Canticle of the Sun. Sometimes this is also known as the Canticle of the Creatures, all right, but we're going to go through this. Now, before we read this is going to be our opening prayer. I need to point out that I did not do a good job of proofing this when I did it. So there are some specific places that I want to identify that are a problem. The word Laudate Si means praise be you. And that phrase is used repeatedly throughout this poem. And I have tended to type it wrong, all right, as praised by you, all right? It's praise be you. And then you go down to the third from the bottom. And it actually says praise be your. It should be praise be you, my Lord. Through ours. Okay? So let's begin in the name of the Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit, amen. And this is written by St. Francis of Assisi. You've sung this at church, all right? In one version or another, there's different translations around, so it might not be exactly what you see here, but it's just a slightly different translation. Most high, all powerful, good Lord, pray with me. Yours are the praises, the glory, the honor, and all blessings. To you alone, most high, do they belong, and no man is worthy to mention your name. Praise be you, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially brother Sun, who is the day, and to whom you give us light. And he is beautiful and radiant with great splendor, and bears a likeness to you, most high one. Praise be you, my Lord, through sister moon and the stars. In heaven you formed them, clear and precious and beautiful. Praise be you, my Lord, through sister mother earth, who sustains us and governs us, and who produces varied fruits with colored flowers and herbs. Praise be you, my Lord, through those who give pardon for your love, and bear infirmity and tribulation. Blessed are those who endure in peace, for by you, most high, they shall be crowned. Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister bodily death, from whom no living man can escape. Woe to those who die in mortal sin. Blessed are those whom death will find in your holy will, for the second death shall do them no harm. Praise and bless my Lord, and give him thanks, and serve him with great humility. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So it's a beautiful, beautiful prayer. And I think as we look through it, Francis feels a connection to all of nature. Brother Sun, sister moon, right there, all right? By the way, one of the movies of St. Francis is called Brother Sun, Sister Moon. That's the title of the movie. How many of you have seen that? All right? A few of you have seen that. It's a good movie. We're going to be showing it later on this year, all right? On April 19th, next month, almost exactly a month from now, on Sunday afternoon at about 3 o'clock, we are going to be showing downstairs the movie Francesco. It's a good movie about St. Francis. It's not perfect, but it's a good movie. And as I've said, it has the most unusual casting I've ever seen in a movie. St. Francis is played by Mickey Rourke. Remember, you know who Mickey Rourke is, all right? Probably the last person I would ever pick to portray St. Francis of Assisi. And then Claire is played by, what's Marianne, what's her name? What is it? Helena Bonham Carter. She played Bellatrix Lestrange in the Harry Potter movies, all right? So again, not someone that you would guess. She's married to Tim Burton, and so she has been in a lot of his movies. And if you've ever seen a Tim Burton movie, they are strange. They are strange, to say the least. So it's a very strangely cast movie, but they did a really good job with it. And then again, sometime, maybe even in the fall, I'm not sure when we're going to do it, but we will be showing Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, all right, as well. So that'll be continuing our immersion into St. Francis of Assisi during this holy year, okay? So, but he talks about Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. Now this gives us some idea of his attitude towards the environment and what Pope Francis was trying to grab hold of in his encyclical Laudato Si. All right, praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars. Praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Mother Earth. Praise be you, my Lord, through those who give pardon for your receive pardon for your love. Blessed are those who endure in peace. Blessed be you, my Lord, through our sister bodily death, and going on and on. So he sees himself connected to the earth and to the universe, right? He looks at the stars, he looks at the moon and the sun, and he recognizes that they are family. He also then looks around at the birds, at the wolf of Gubbio. He looks at trees and flowers and everything. That these are my family. These are my relatives, right? And I think that that's part of what Pope Francis was trying to get at, to grab at, as he was talking about the environment and our relationship to the environment. It was a very controversial encyclical when it came out. First of all, because Pope Francis was a very controversial pope, right? And especially here in America, all right? Here in America, more than any other country that I'm aware of, all right? Politics got involved. And everything for the last 20 years has been seen through the lens of politics, all right? And so, whereas St. Francis and Pope Francis are not talking about politics, they're talking about morality, and they're talking about spirituality, you know, and our connectedness to the universe, our connectedness to the earth, you know, and but it was all read through the lens of politics. I hope we can get past this. I hope we can. This is toxic. This focus on politics as the definition of reality, as that everything in the universe is about politics. This is incredibly toxic. I mean, we've seen it within families. I've seen families that are not speaking to one another because one of them, one group of them are pro-Trump and others are against Trump. Well, you know, and so they don't even speak to one another. Or you're a liberal and you're a conservative, and so they don't even speak to one another. I mean, it becomes fierce, right? Haven't we seen this around us? If it's not happening in your family, praise God, right? But if it's not in your family, you know families where this is happening. This is happening, where politics has simply captivated the soul of America. We see everything through the lens of politics. And there are many things that aren't part of politics. What Pope Francis was trying to do, what Pope Leo is also trying to do, is speak through morality. The morality that is handed down to us from Christ and from the scriptures, right? What is the moral reality, all right? I've gotten a number of criticisms. A couple of months ago, I talked about the immigration issues. And it was a time when everything was getting very heated. And there were a lot of things happening that were ugly and awful. And I said at the time, I said, I'm not getting into the politics of this. I'm not going to say, you need to be supportive of open borders or a wide open immigration policy. And I'm not saying that you need to be restrictive, that you need to only, I'm saying, you can have those positions, but I'm not getting into that. What I am getting into is that however you see immigration and immigrants, all right, and refugees, even if you believe that we need to return the vast majority of them to their homes, we have to do that with compassion and mercy and gentleness and love. That's the Christian way. And there are people, why are you getting into politics? I'm not getting into politics. I absolutely am not, and I said that very clearly. Pope Leo has spoken about this. Pope Francis spoke about this, all right? Pope Benedict spoke about this. Pope John Paul II spoke about this, and about the need to see human beings as sons and daughters of God. As sons and daughters of God, and to treat them that way. Now, yeah, we have a right, the church says that America has a right to know who's coming into this country and to restrict who's coming into this country in a just fashion, all right? But you have to treat them with dignity. You have to treat them with value. You have to treat them with compassion. This is what the church is saying. It's not getting into the politics of the matter, all right? There's also the issue of the war in Iran that's going on right now, all right? Now, some of you may think this is a good idea. We need to take Iran down, all right? They have been the exporters of terrorism since 1979, all right? When they took over the country and when they took over our embassy and our people that were there, and that they've been promoters and exporters of terrorism for that whole time. And they have been, all right? Iran is one of the most terror-oriented countries in the world, and they are feeding terrorists all over the place. But first of all, is this war a good idea? And secondly, the church always says that war is a last resort. War must be your absolutely final resort. If there is any other way to resolve and deal with this crisis, whatever it is, without going to war, you must choose that path. You must choose that path, right? So, now, is that politics? It's addressing political issues, right? But it's trying to bring the light of the gospel to bear onto situations of our own time, all right? How you feel about what I'm saying? Okay? But some people say, oh, he's into politics again. I tell you, I bend myself into pretzel shape, trying not to be political from the pulpit, all right? But I am not willing to not tell the truth, to not tell what the scriptures teach, what the gospels teach, what the church teaches, all right? I will do that whether people like it or not. So if I'm offending you, I'm sorry. That's not my intention. It's just simply trying to speak the truth, all right? But the truth, as we're hearing it from Laudate Si, is to see the environment as not just something out there. You know, we were created by God. If you go back to the first two chapters of Genesis, the first two books of the Bible, and you see the creation of human beings, and we were placed in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, we're really there as gardeners, as stewards of creation. We are to use creation, right, to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves, and to provide for ourselves, but we're not to abuse it, all right? Have any ever grown up on a farm? Anybody? Just a couple, all right? How many of you have a garden or have had a garden? What do you do with a garden? You have to take care of it. You have to take care of it. One of the things, the farm I grew up on was a tobacco farm. And one of the problems with growing tobacco, all right, besides all the bad things, bad effects of it, is that it sucks. Well, it sucks the nitrogen out of the soil. So you can't be growing tobacco in the same field over and over and over. All right, the soil will not support it. All right, because you have to have a lot of nitrogen in the soil in order to grow tobacco. So what you have to do is you move your tobacco crop around the farm into different fields or different parts of your fields, and then in the plots where you grew tobacco last year, you have to put in plants that will put nitrogen into the soil. All right, you have to take care of the soil, or else it will fail you. It will fail you. It will not do what you want it to do. You have to be a good steward of the soil, of the land. All right. You also then perhaps you have a creek that runs through your farm, and maybe you're feeding you're using it to water your cattle and any other farm animals that you have. Well, you have to take care of it. You have to make sure it's running. You have to make sure it's running so that you can have water running through there, so that it will water the animals that need to be there. Sometimes you need to take the water from there and pump it out. In order, if you're going through a dry spell, all right, a dry summer, you're going to have to pump water onto your whatever crop it is, whether it's tobacco or corn or wheat or whatever it is. You have to use that carefully, and if you don't use it carefully, you will kill your land. You will kill your land, all right? And all too often, we human beings who were told that we were created to be gardeners, stewards of the earth, have misused it dramatically. All right? If we were somehow able to ask the forests of the world, was the creation of human beings a good thing for you? What would they say? No. We were able to ask the rivers, whether the creation of human beings a blessing for you, what are they going to say? No. If we were able to ask the air, the atmosphere of the earth, was the creation of human beings a good thing for you? What would they say? No. We've done a terrible job. We've done a terrible job of caring for this planet that God has gifted us with. We have not taken good care of it, all right? Will our children and grandchildren say, thank you, Mom and Dad, thank you, Grandma and Granddad, for how you took care of the earth and then handed it on to me? Are they going to do that? Not likely. Not likely. All right? So, we have to, what Laudate Si, Praise Be You, the encyclical, and Pope Francis there, is reminding us that we have to be good stewards of the earth. And we've reached a point where we are so populous, the earth is so populous, and technology has sucked so much of life out of the earth that we're starting to see real calamities now. Real calamities now. This is not a future problem. This is a now problem, all right? And so he is calling us through that encyclical to become aware of that, right? And to begin to make better choices. One of the things that is being projected is that over the next century, that the environment in many ways is going to start breaking down. And more parts of the earth are going to become uninhabitable. So what's going to happen when more and more parts of the earth become uninhabitable? Massive immigration. Massive immigration. As parts of the world that are now maybe already beginning to show signs of falling apart, people are going to start moving. People are going to start moving, all right? This is happening in Africa right now, all right? Many people are moving from Africa and are trying to get to Europe in order to find a place where they can live, because where they live is becoming uninhabitable, and that's only going to get worse. That's only going to get worse. There's predicted that in the next century, I don't know how many decades from now it's going to be, we are going to see the largest migration crisis the world has ever seen. It's in our interest to serve being better to the earth so that people don't have to flee their homelands in order to go somewhere where they can survive, all right? Because we're going to be there, all right? We're already there. You know, people are flocking to the United States, all right? Seeking refuge. They are refugees. They are seeking refuge. Not so much at this point because of environment problems, but because of government problems in Central and South America, where they have criminal governments down there, where they have the drug cartels are running the countries, and there is widespread murder, right, that is happening there. So people are taking their families, their kids, and they're trying to come up here to provide a better life for their families, all right? And we're already saying, wait a minute, we can't take all these people, all right? And sometimes we say it with just kind of an angry, hateful attitude. Sometimes it's even, hey, we love you. We recognize the truth that you're seeking a better home for your families. But we can't take you in. We can't take you in. Europe's far worse on that situation than we are, all right? There are problems that are over there. And what happens then, because when you have mass migration issues, is that the makeup of your society changes dramatically, all right? We're seeing this with Hispanics coming in to the United States, and they're bringing different customs, they're bringing different languages in, and so it becomes more and more difficult for us to work together, to cooperate with one another, and so people are afraid of this. They're afraid of this, so they're opposing it. They're opposing it. Sometimes legitimately, sometimes not legitimately. But this is what Pope Francis was addressing. This is what St. Francis was addressing as we talk about the earth, beginning to see the earth and in the environment, whether it's the air or the rivers or the land, as our brothers and sisters, and to treat the earth itself. You know, we say you got to treat human beings with compassion and mercy and love. You got to treat the earth that way too, right? And if we don't, we will be the ones that pay for it. We will be the ones that suffer from that reality that we did not take care of our land, our air, and our water, right? So that's what Laudate Si is talking about, all right? It is especially focused on climate change. Now, I know that climate change is another issue that you start trying to talk about it, everybody sees it through the lens of politics, right? Everybody sees it through the lens of politics. I mean, some people can't see climate change as a problem because politics is blinding them, all right? Other people are overly focused on climate change, all right? And that we've got to do all these different things that are going to wreck everybody's economy, all right? Is going to make a miserable situation for people, and they can't see it because of their politics. Politics is toxic. Can you repeat with me? Politics is toxic. Politics is toxic, all right? It is never really about the common good. It is never really about the common good. It's always about what's good for me, right? And not what's good for everybody else, and certainly not at this point what's good for the environment, okay? So when we deal with Francis, St. Francis, we got to deal with stuff like this, all right? He is speaking to us about all of this stuff, and we have to hear it. Now, again, there are political dimensions of this. There are policies that need to be developed by the various countries and communities in order to deal with this. The Vatican's been doing this for a while. Pope Benedict XVI was very pro-environment, and if you go to Rome and go up on the top of St. Peter's, and you look over at the offices, the papal offices and everything, what you'll see are, what are they called? The big solar panels, that's what it is. He had the entire roof of Vatican City covered with solar panels, right? And they are trying as best as they can to use solar energy to heat and to air condition the entire place, right? So they are really far ahead. So I'm gonna just stop there and just ask for questions, and if you want to blast me, go ahead. No questions or comments about this? Okay, all right, all right. Don't say I don't tell you the truth, all right? So, the encyclical Laudate Si, the subtitle is on care for our common home, all right? That's what he is writing about. Now, what time is it? We're at 7 o'clock. What, what I want to do now is I want to switch topics. I decided I wanted to spend about half of tonight talking about St. Clare, all right? And who was she, and what was the relationship between her and Francis about, and what is her impact in the world today, all right? So we're familiar with St. Clare. When St. Francis went through his conversion, and he began going through the city of Assisi and preaching and teaching, often just going through and dancing and singing and talking about Jesus to everybody. There was a church in the city where Francis was preaching, and somehow Clare was there. She heard him, and her heart was simply transfixed by his message of poverty and of love of Christ, right? And complete and absolute dedication of your life to Christ. And so she was just filled with amazement about this. Now the problem was that she was 16. She wanted to go and become a Franciscan right away. But she was only 16, and her father would have nothing to do with this, all right? You wouldn't either, all right? Again, Francis was a wild man, all right? He didn't do anything the way he was supposed to, because he felt no obligation to the culture, right? He didn't feel a need to fit in. He belonged to God entirely. His loyalty was only to God. Now you know that that's absolutely what every one of us are called to, is to have no loyalties except to God, And Francis had achieved that. But remember what it looked like. Francis abandoned his family, abandoned the clothes that he had. He began walking around in dirty rags. That was all he wore. He lived on the edge of town, lived outside, all right, and went around begging. He had no means of income, so he went around from house to house begging for food, right? He was a mendicant, right? A mendicant is someone who makes their living by begging, right? Okay, so he was a mendicant. And there were other young men in Assisi, many of whom who knew Francis. They had been part of the same circle, all right, of friends before Francis went through his conversion. So they knew him. They loved him. Remember, he was kind of the king of the party. He was the king of the social life there of young people in Assisi. And so at first they're thinking, what's gone wrong with him? But as they watched him, and then sometimes they would run into him and just kind of catch up with one another, and they saw how incredibly happy Francis was. And they recognized, I'm not as happy as Francis. You know, I'm trying to do what my family wanted me to do. I mean, again, they're also from the merchant class, so they had a fair amount of money. They were not wealthy, all right? The wealthy were more the banking class. The merchant class would have been mostly upper middle class. They had nice homes, all right? They had nice clothes. They were well respected within the community. And so they're raising these sons to fit into that, all right? They're going to take over the family business, and they're going to have nice lives and raise nice families. And so that was the plan. But all of a sudden, they're talking to Francis and listening to Francis, and they're realizing, you know, this is all nice, but I'm not really happy. Francis is ecstatically happy. Every time you run into him, he is ecstatically happy. He is full of love and full of joy and full of peace. And so one by one, these young men of Assisi do what Francis did. They leave their families. They leave their what their families had planned for them. They gave up the money. They gave up the nice clothes. They gave up everything material, and they went out and they began living with Francis on the edge. Imagine if it was here, or imagine it was here. If you live, let's say you live down here in Covington, and all of a sudden your sons start telling you, I'm going to go down and live on the riverbank. I'm not going to live on the riverbank because I don't have any choice, because I don't have a job, I don't have a place to live, I don't have any money. I'm going to live on the riverbank on purpose with this Francis, all right, who you think has lost his mind, all right? We're going to go do that. We're going to do that. And so that happened for a few years, and it was growing. This Franciscan movement was growing. And then there was this young girl who was 16 when she first met Francis. And she wanted to, at that point, she already wanted to join him. And she couldn't. Her father would never have allowed that. When she turned 18, it was on Palm Sunday, she turned 18. She now, legally, she could leave her father's home. And she did, that very day. She left her home and she went down into the valley where the Portiuncula, the little portion, the church, St. Mary of the Angels, had been given to Francis and to his brothers, to his friars, for their own. And that's where they lived. Again, they didn't live inside the church. They lived just outside, around this tiny little church. They lived there. And so she went down, and this had already been prearranged. She for the 2 years between when she first met Francis and then when she left home, they remained in communication. She would meet him, usually surreptitiously, and so they would talk, and he would give her spiritual guidance. And so finally, they had made arrangements that now that she can legally leave on her own, that she would come to him. She came to him and to the other friars, all right, and he accepted her into the order, all right. He cut her hair. You know, that was one of the signs. That was one of the signs for a woman. You know, a woman's hair is her glory, right? I mean, the scriptures even say that a woman's hair is her glory. And so he cut her hair. He just chopped her hair down to not much at all. He didn't shave her head, but it was very, very short. And since he had probably not gone to beauty school, it probably was not a really attractive cut, all right? And then she wore a veil, all right, to cover her head, all right? Again, she's letting go of the world, and this is a great symbol, one of the primary symbols of that, that she is leaving the world, and everything that the world says is necessary and important. She's leaving it behind. She's leaving it behind. Now, she did not stay with them, all right? It would have been scandalous for a woman, a young woman like 18 years old, to live with all these men down in the valley there, all right? Probably everybody would have rejected Francis and all these guys completely. They would have driven them out if they started taking in women, all right? It would have been, that's too scandalous, you know, because everybody would presume that these men who are now taking in these young girls are sexually abusing them, all right? And we'd think the same thing, right? We'd be very suspicious of the same thing if we're watching this happen. So what Francis had done is he had made arrangements in a Benedictine convent nearby for Claire to move in there. And after a short period of time, he and the brothers had built the beginnings of a convent at San Damiano. San Damiano is the church where Francis first heard Jesus speak to him from the cross, right? And so they had built some kind of a rudimentary, at that point, convent, and Claire and a few other women who had joined her moved in there. Eventually, Claire's sister Agnes would also, after she reached of age, she went in and she lived with Claire and these other sisters, and they're forming this order. They're forming this order. They presented themselves, as Francis had done, to the Pope, and the Pope had written a rule for how they were to live, about how they were to pray, when they were to pray, what kind of work they were going to do. And all of the religious orders of women at that time were cloistered. Now Francis and his friars were not. They were going out. They were going into Assisi, and they're ministering there. They're preaching and all of that. They're also going around. They're traveling around to nearby villages and towns. We saw a few weeks ago. I talked about Francis actually traveling to the Holy Land and meeting with the Sultan. Right. So the men were not locked down like that, but it was considered too dangerous for the women to do that. So they were cloistered religious nuns, right? Which meant that their vocation was to prayer. Their vocation was to prayer and to silence. So that's what they were doing. That's how Claire and her sisters were living there. Let's see. In 1224, okay, so Claire was born in 1194, and she left home and joined Francis and the friars and began forming the religious order of women of the Franciscans, who will come to be known as the Poor Clares. The Poor Clares. They're still a convent of the Poor Clares there in Assisi. All right, that happened in 1212. In 1215, Clare was designated the abbess of San Damiano Convent. In 1224, Clare begins a long illness. She's going to be sick for the rest of her life. She's going to be suffering greatly for the rest of her life. But she is still the abbess of the convent. In 1226, what happens in 1226? Francis died 800 years ago this year. All right, Francis will die. Clare, up until the last few days of Francis's life, never left the convent. That was the way it was. When you checked into a cloistered order, you never left. You never left, unless they were going to found, maybe they had too many women, so they're going to found another house somewhere, and you may leave when you're sent to another house. But in the last few days of Francis' life, she did go to him. She prayed with him, and she comforted him and spent time with him. So she was there when Francis died, right? She had a younger sister, Beatrice, who in 1228 would join her at San Damiano, and surprisingly, her mother joined in. All right, I guess her father was dead at this point, and so the mother also came and became a sister of St. Clare at San Damiano. In 1240, we're jumping quite a bit here, we're jumping 12 years. In September of 1240, the Saracens, who are Muslims, are attacking Italy. They have invaded Italy, and they're going around from town to town, and they are invading, and they're robbing, and they're killing, and so people are terrified as these Muslims are coming around. They are on their way to Assisi, and so everybody in Assisi is terrified. Many of them flee. All right, Claire, her sisters, all right, members of her order, are terrified too. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Are they going to rape us? All right, are they going to kill us? What are they going to do? What Claire did was that she went up onto the roof of the convent, and from the roof of the convent she could look down into the valley. All right, it's a magnificent view. All right, if you've been to where that San Damiano is, it is a magnificent view of the valley. And she goes up onto the roof, and she has a monstrance with the Blessed Sacrament, and she places that looking out over the valley. All right, and she and her sisters then were there praying, and there was a storm that blew up, and it stopped the Muslims that were coming through the valley up to Assisi, and instead of fighting their way through, they turned away and went somewhere else. All right, so Claire is attributed with this miracle of turning away those who wanted to come and destroy the city of Assisi. All right. Very often, when you see a picture of St. Clare, She's there with the monstrance. She's holding that, so she is very, very connected with the Blessed Sacrament. In 1253, on August the 11th, 1253, Clare dies. Her sister Agnes dies shortly after. In 1255, just 2 years later, Clare is canonized as a saint. All right, Francis too was canonized within a couple of years after he had passed. In 1260, Clare's body is placed in the church that is now known as the Church of Santa Chiara, St. Clare. All right, it's in the center of Assisi. It is in that church that the cross of San Damiano that spoke to Francis, where Jesus spoke to Francis from that cross, is hanging in the Church of Santa Chiara. You can see it when you go there and pray before it. So she was buried inside this church, and at some point they seem to have lost her. All right, they seem to have not kept great records. All right, I guess there's other people buried there, and they didn't know exactly where she was buried. In 1872, they find her body. They find her body with doing some kind of construction or whatever, and they come upon her body. She is then placed in a newly constructed crypt. Crypt is a basement, all right? And if you go to the Church of Santa Chiara, then you will go down into the basement, and you'll go into where she had been buried. But she would be placed in this crypt, and her body is visible, all right? You'll walk by, all right? It's kind of like an assembly line because there's so many people behind you. You can't just stand there and spend time. But you walk by, and it's a big open area with like a window, all right? And you see her lying there with her hands across her chest. And her body is incorrupt. So it is still in relatively healthy state, all right, as you look at that. So you see Clare lying there in the crypt, all right? That's the story of Clare. Throw it open for questions. Well, we've often talked about saints who have been incorrupt. They're not all, but there are many of the saints whose bodies have been incorrupt, that they did not deteriorate, as Clare's did not. And so often we've kind of thought of that as a miracle. There are other people who were not saints, whose body, after hundreds of years, they have discovered are incorrupt. They have not decayed. They have not rotted. A body, especially back in a time when they were not doing embalming, all right? After 500 years, it should have been just nothing but dust. There shouldn't be nothing else lying there. No, not in any special way. I mean, I'm sure they did something. But they didn't have the tools that we have today, and they didn't do like the Egyptians. The Egyptians had developed a science of embalming, especially the pharaohs and these other people who were important, so that their bodies remained. But the Europeans didn't do that. All right, they didn't do that. So usually, only very few bodies remain incorrupt. Not all of them are saints, but an inordinate number of them are saints, all right? So, Patty. The poor Clares. Now, within the Franciscan order, there are any number of Franciscan groups that have a different kind of lifestyle and order, all right? So there are a number of different groups of Franciscan sisters. The poor Clares are still cloistered. If they do any service, it's just greeting people and welcoming them as they are coming on pilgrimage and to the whole Franciscan experience, all right? I mean, you went there, right? You saw her, and yeah. Yes, sister. Well, yeah, they would somehow have kept it going. Now, again, they were founded by Francis, but Clare became the first abbess, all right? And then, of course, they would have elected other leadership as time went on. And they need to, any cloistered order, like any order, has to have some source of income. I'm not sure what they did, you know? It's like if you go to Gethsemane, and they don't so much anymore, but you buy bread or you buy fruitcake or whatever. That was how they kept the monastery going, all right? With sisters like Sisters of Notre Dame, they teach, so they do go out, all right? They do go out and do ministry. They may work at hospitals, all right? They founded St. Elizabeth's Hospital, and then what's the other hospital in Pikeville, is it? St. Clair. Oh, is it St. Clair? In Moorhead, that's right. So the Sisters of Divine Providence also are teachers, and so they go out. But there are still orders that are cloistered, that they exist for prayer, all right? Again, the monks of Gethsemane, that's a cloistered order. That is a contemplative order, and their primary work is prayer. Now, yes, they'll go out and they'll work in the fields, and they'll grow this or that, and they'll make, they don't make too much of it anymore because they've gotten a lot older, all right? They've not had a lot of young people coming in and joining the order. So they're getting pretty up there, all right? And so they bring people in. They've built a guest house there. If you've never gone to Gethsemane, I encourage you to go. They've got a fantastic guest house down there that you can stay and you can pray with the monks. They pray like, is it 7 times a day that they pray, and you can go and do it. Now, you have to get up like at 3 in the morning, all right, for the first one, all right? Matins. What's that? You don't have to do that. No. First time I went down there on my own, I thought, well, I'm going to pray with them all day. And I got up. Oh, I was a wreck. I was so exhausted because, you go to this and then you go back and you can't fall asleep. And then they start Mass like at 6 o'clock. And so you have to get back up. And so, I realized I'm not a monk of Gethsemane. And so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because I want to I want to not just be all foggy-headed when I'm trying to pray and meditate. If you're tired, you can't think straight. So, but yeah, they were cloistered. They're still cloistered. I do not know what they do. They're so famous now. All right, they're so famous now that specifically that house is so famous now that they get donations like crazy. They're very strongly supported. And also in Italy, because this is true for a lot of the churches throughout Italy, their Catholic past is so much of their historical and artistic heritage that the government gives them money to keep them going, all right? Because that's the primary reason people are traveling to Italy. They're going there to see all these magnificent churches and going into these convents and monasteries, whatever. So it is in the state's interest to keep them operating. So they give them money out of self-interest, there. Yes, anybody else? No? Okay. I never know what that means when I don't get any questions. I never know whether it means that I did such a great job that nobody has any other questions, or if everybody's just kind of like, well, I don't know what to ask, right? I remember when I was taking trigonometry in high school, and I was not a good math student. I don't know why I got signed up for trigonometry. And, I had a dream one time, and I have these dreams where I'm supposed to be doing something, and I don't know what I'm doing, where I was in the dream, it's the first day of school, and I'm in this high school, and I'm supposed to teach calculus. And I'm standing there thinking, I don't even know what calculus is. How in the world am I going to, how did I get myself into this situation? I don't know if you have dreams like that or not. I also, sometimes I'm on stage in a play, and I have no idea what the play is, and I have no idea what the dialogue is, and it's like, how did I do this? How did I do this? Anyway, so So I never know. I say, are they not asking me because they're sitting like me in trigonometry and I have no idea what's going on, all right? So I like getting questions. Yes? Yeah. Some of them are. Why do we abhor it? It's around. It's around. All right. There was a friend of mine. He's come back home, but he had been in seminary and he dropped out. But a deeply devout young man, and he joined a group of Franciscans in Chicago, who were mendicants. They went around begging. All right. They also went around all year long barefoot. All right, and living this very very poor life. His mom was brokenhearted. She absolutely was. She was thrilled to death when actually the order started struggling and was no longer able to support the guys that had joined. He came back home, and so she was thrilled to death for that. But it's still around. All right. Even the Franciscans. By the end of Francis's life, he had written another rule that was somewhat less strict. And then since then, all right, when he died, Brother Elias became the head of the order, and he wrote at the enthusiastic support of most of the friars. He wrote a much less severe order for them to live. So most of them are able to go out and work now. All right, Franciscans, you have them all over the place. All right, we have there was a mother house over in Cincinnati, and they were running parishes. They were also running schools, and so now there are still some of the more strict forms of Franciscanism. All right, but so it's we don't have a whole lot of them because there's not a whole lot of people that want to join them. Would you want to join one? What do you mean? Okay, we don't have a lot of them because we don't have a lot of them because they're not around, all right? And people see them, they don't feel called to that. I just think that there aren't a lot of people today that feel called to that type of asceticism and that type of lifestyle, all right? And the church doesn't encourage it because I'm not sure it's good for people's health. I'm not sure it's good. You almost have to be a fanatic to choose that way of life today. All right. I don't know. Find one and ask them. All right. What's that? Yeah, that's why they were so few of them, and they were no longer able to keep it going, and so they all went home. Yeah. And even you run into Franciscans today, and they may not be wearing shoes, but they'll be wearing sandals. And in the winter, they'll be wearing socks with their sandals, all right? So there are very few Franciscans who would try to do that today. Did you really? And he was barefoot? He had sandals on, okay. Yeah, it's pretty common. Most of them, when you run into a Franciscan, most of them are wearing sandals, usually with socks. Because today we don't want to look at dirty feet. Okay? Well, yes. Yeah. Yeah, they'll still come and beg, all right? And some of the religious orders, not just Franciscans, but they'll come and beg and ask for support for what they do. The Franciscan Sisters of Mercy, just down the road, just down the street here, and they will come around and they will beg so that they can serve the poor, all right? So yeah, it's like you can't do that without money. They have, oh God, my brain just doesn't work some days. What's the machine that you use? Ultrasound. They have an ultrasound, or even maybe a couple of ultrasound machines there, because they got people from that neighborhood who can't afford to go to a doctor or whatever, and they're coming there to find out if they are pregnant, and if their pregnancy looks like it's a healthy one, if there's anything special they need to do. So yeah, and they give food out, and so somebody's got to pay for all that. It's a pro-life center. Yes. All right. Next week, we will be talking about St. Francis and the Cross. St. Francis and the Cross. Now, that was a big part of his own spirituality. But we also know that Francis is the first person historically known to receive the stigmata, right? The wounds of Christ. Now, the church does not say he was the first person that ever happened. He's the first one we know about, right? There could have been other people, and there was actually a man living here he was out by St. Patrick Church in Taylor Mill. He lived close there with a friend of mine, and he had stigmata, and I met him, and he showed me the wounds. Now, there was somebody here at noon. Let me see. Here it is. Who had pictures? Let me see what I've got here. Okay, he only sent me one picture. He had some that were. I'm going to ask you. Oh wait, it says 5 photos. Okay. Now, on Good Friday, he always had in his hands and his feet, but on Good Friday, he would start bleeding from the points of the cross, or of the crown of thorns. All right. So let me just kind of, if you want to come and see it right afterwards. Okay, I've got these pictures here. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, okay. Who? Rhoda Wise. Okay. Never heard of her. Okay. I met him, and he showed me the wounds, and I am absolutely convinced it was true. Yes, it is. Yeah. It's different for different people. Hi. Yeah, and I've met him, so and he showed me